Hello and welcome to Fathoms Deep, a Black Sails podcast from Common Room Radio. I'm Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
How you doing, Daphne?
I'm ready to begin the duel.
Oh, yeah, you are. Come out swinging. Hardcore. This was such an exciting episode. Another Lucas Etlin. So brilliant.
It is. And I have to actually also note that this is also written by Dan Schatz. So,
oh, that's right.
So there's something, just to remind everyone, episode 9 of season 2.
That's right.
Is the same combination. I don't know what it is with these boys and clocks. But seriously.
And clocks. Interesting. Yes.
Totally get a little clock callback here with Teach. So yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for that reminder.
Many, many thanks. And the writing, I just have to say before we even get started, Maddie. I love Maddie. I know we'll get there, but the writing for her is extraordinary.
It is. It is extraordinary.
Gosh, it's so good.
Maddie manages to bring in so much of the important stuff we've talked about throughout.
Yes.
But put a totally different feeling on a little bit because of the person that she is. So
because of who she is. You're absolutely right.
I love it. I love it. So yes, we will talk about that. Before we start, I wanted to bring up 2 things. One, actually, is I meant to bring up last week. I was mistaken about something 2 episodes ago when Jack and Chaz were saying goodbye to each other.
Yeah.
And I said, I thought that when Jack says, I never liked you, I thought he was saying that to Charles. And he wasn't. And
uh-oh.
Yep, a few people brought that up.
Yeah.
And Toby confirmed. So I still love my interpretation, but it's not correct. I didn't do a special apology to Jack like I did in season 1 when I got him wrong in the brothel.
Yes.
That I never liked you was actually to the crew member who was pressuring him to kick Vane out, and just a cute little thing that I didn't notice it, but Toby told me that it was actually that guy that we loved so much with the 500 pieces who lost his 500 pieces twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Toby Schmitz, for that fun little detail that just makes my mistake totally worth it because I love that guy.
And now you know more.
Now I know more about that guy. So that was one thing. The other thing is that our friend Kim brought up a really interesting thing about Woods Rogers.
She's Quick Click Clark, by the way, too. That's her pirate name.
She has an idea that, again, this was about, I guess, 2 episodes ago, but I think it is relevant to this, that the way, the angles and the lighting that they might use when Woods Rogers is being kind of civilized governor guy, we see more of his non-scarred side of his face.
What?
And when he's being kind of what I keep calling his pirate self.
Yes. We see the scars?
Yeah. So everyone, let's all keep track of that.
Oh, I'm going to look for that. Oh, I do love him, though. That actor is just killing it.
I know, he really is.
So good. Really holding the room with Toby Schmitz, which is not easy to do.
Oh my God, I love these 2 together.
They're wonderful, right? This is maybe my favorite dynamic is these 2 together.
Yep. Okay. But yeah, everyone keep an eye out for that thing that Kim said, because I'm really curious if we all find it. All right. So yeah, let's start talking about how we're breaking this down. Sail! So I had the idea to kind of mix things up a little bit and do a slightly different order than we have been doing. I know. Well, first of all, Flint and Silver, not in the same place.
That's right.
Right?
We almost always put those 2 together. That's fascinating. They are not together. Ooh.
They are not together. So they are in separate sections. So I thought that we'll start actually with the Walrus Crew. So we're going to do the opposite.
Okay.
We're going to start with the Walrus Crew and Ocracoke Island.
Yes. Okay.
Then we will do Nassau, which involves, all of our people who are still on New Providence Island. And then at the end, we will do Silver and Maddie and Scott.
Okay. Silver and Maddie for the end. I like it. Okay.
Let's start doing it.
All right. Let's get into characters.
Prepare to board.
Aye.
Okay, so we start actually on the Walrus, but we have some number of members from the island who have joined the Walrus crew.
That's right. At least a few. Mm-hmm.
And that's our first kind of moment of action and conflict was that part of the rigging falls.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, is that scary. Like
it is very scary. You see
right?
just how much, like, it, and all of that depends on one knot, one lashing. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So Dobbs starts yelling at the person who I guess tied it. And then Flint's like, and Flint's totally right here.
Flint is not only right, but a sexy beast right now when he says, if he tied it wrong, then you instructed him wrong. That's leadership right there. That's, oh, Captain, my captain.
That is totally right. And he's 100% right. It's like, you knew what you were doing. You taught him. He messed up. Therefore, you messed up. It's that's so simple.
And it's also, of course, keeping the peace in a way that absolutely needs to be done in this situation. Yeah.
Right. And he makes that very clear.
Right.
And then Billy takes him aside and he's like, yeah, I don't think that's the first time we're going to see that.
And Billy's making me proud now, too, here.
Right? I knew you were going to like that.
That was great. Well, of course. Yeah. Everyone's wrong but you, he says. And that pause where he's thinking about it and then says, maybe. Like, Billy, also a sexy beast.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, it was, and he also makes a good point. And I felt like this was the point we saw when we saw Silver at the end of the last episode, when after he knows what Flint had said to the Queen, I feel like Silver kind of was like the same thing. Like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I wanted you to convince them. I'm not sure this is what I wanted you to convince them of.
Uh-huh.
And that's what Billy's saying. He's like, look, I supported you when this was about defending Nassau, but now we're waging war on England and a war we're trying to win? Like, he definitely had the Queen's ear.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say one thing. We don't need to jump ahead to Scott, but like clearly this is what Scott wants too from his discussion with Maddie. And now we're going to see Teach's response to that. And It's just interesting to watch how everyone reacts to this new plan. Mm-hmm. Basically that like Flint kind of pulled out of nowhere.
Yes. Yeah. As he tends to do.
Right.
And it's not a small plan. This is a really big plan.
It's a really big plan. Remember how I reacted last week? I love this plan.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I probably, as Billy, wouldn't really like this plan. Like if my life and my crew's life was on the line.
Yes.
But me watching the show and listening to that rousing speech, I love this plan.
Uh-huh.
It's a very exciting plan. So they get to the island and then Flint's like, well, I gotta go talk to Teach now. So you may look really smart very soon. And he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. Yeah. And it was kind of nice, actually, I thought. So because he was reminding Billy that he respects his opinions, I think, when he said that.
He does. I mean, again, he's Flint, so he manages. He manages to put him down.
He's managing Billy.
Bit.
But he put him down at first. But that was managing Billy when he was saying, right, everyone's wrong but you, and then saying, maybe we'll find out that you're the smart one after all, because he knows it's a risky business. It's a risky plan that he's got.
Right, and this is, I mean, we know this is part of Flint's leadership style, which we can maybe when it's all done, we can have like a big discussion of leadership styles. Like he was doing this to Silver not so long ago. Like he definitely he definitely is sometimes disrespectful of his immediate subordinates when he's trying to make a point. It works for him to a point. That whole like and feared thing. Like they don't really like him. As we know. The thing about Ocracoke when we first see it, like everyone seems to be having fun except for Vane.
Yeah.
Like they're all,
that is true,
hooting and hollering. Even Teach.
Teach is clearly having fun.
And Vane is just sitting there, just really pensive. It's not really, he's very still. He's very still. He's very much
doubting himself, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Okay, can I just say one thing about Teach's tent?
I want to say things too. So yes.
Right. Isn't it gorgeous? I want that.
Well, I wasn't going to say that. A gorgeous tent. I guess it was. Yeah, the bed. Oh
No,
my
see,
gosh,
yeah,
that headboard.
you'll have to excuse. I just have a thing about like Teach's camp furniture. I love the big table. I love the chairs. I love
The red chair.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little. I don't think this is extremely realistic to have all this amazing wooden furniture like out in the middle of a beach, but I love it.
But if you took it off a ship, what are you going to do with it? I
That's
mean,
true.
it's
That's
just
true.
something.
It's
It's,
not-
a prize you took. Use it. Like
No,
it.
you're right. You're right. They're not
Yeah.
trying to like save that for future generations.
No.
Clearly.
He didn't purchase it with hard-earned money or
You're
anything.
totally
I mean,
right.
not to say that winning a ship isn't hard-earned, but
No, but still.
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that bet. Okay, now we can talk about the tent in the way you wanted to. Sorry.
I love seeing Teach with this woman. I know that
Right.
sounds strange, but we talked about Teach and women
No.
and how he feels about them and how he's had I forget now. It's 9 wives in 5 years or something like that. It's insane.
Something like
So,
that, yes.
Yeah, and how they leave their mark on you, and she clearly remembers him. So
Right.
there's something actually more to that. Like this relationship that the two of them have, there's a level of intimacy here. There's a level of comfort. They're
absolutely.
kind of taking comfort in one another. With all of this crazy stuff going on around them, it's nothing like the other brothel scenes that we've had. Even like Featherstone obviously thinks himself in love with Adele, but
Right.
Adele's always kind of rolling her eyes and waiting for him to leave. And that is not
Right.
what's happening here. And it's not, I don't think seduction either. I mean, I think that
Yeah, well, and we know that they've known each other for a long time. She knew him back when he left NASA.
yes.
And she knows him.
And she knows him.
She says, when Vane forced you from NASA.
Yeah. Well, and she knows about his desire for sons.
Right.
That's a really intimate detail about Teach.
Absolutely. This is confirmation that Teach's whole like bravado in the
Yes.
beginning about how he viewed his own leaving NASA and his relationship with Vane was that
Yeah.
this was actually something that truly hurt him. That he came out of that saying only God gives sons. Like he wanted Vane to be his son way back
Did.
then.
Wow. Yeah. That's a good point. It's a great scene. I loved that. The whole bit was wonderful.
Yeah, their intimacy that he then tells her, she's like, I don't know, how did you bring it back?
Right.
And he's like, it doesn't have to last long this time. I mean,
And we hear about the shrapnel, so he's on borrowed time.
he's on borrowed time and it's ticking. And he calls
And
it
it's ticking.
He calls it a grim little timepiece. Sorry.
A grim little timepiece. Yep.
Sorry, I just had to put that in. Thank you, Dan Schatz. We love you, Dan Schatz. Yeah, it is. It's this beautiful moment of intimacy. He has been not like fun, badass, obviously. But this is, I feel like, our first really human moment with him. And it's very beautiful and it's very touching.
It is.
And
Yeah,
it still
I agree.
totally works with the rest of what we've seen of him.
It absolutely does. It
Right?
informs us of his character very much. It fills him out more.
I know.
Yeah, I think it works beautifully.
And the timing is perfect because we're about to see
And
his
the timing is
heartbroken.
perfect because we're about to see his heartbroken. And it's very interesting to have him in this duel against Flint and feel a little torn about what I want to happen. I mean, Flint is my guy. I do like Teach,
Right.
though.
The interesting thing about this structure of this show is that we have two
Okay.
duels. We have Teach and Flint, and we have Rackham and Rogers.
And Rogers,
And both of them duel first with words and then with other things.
Interesting. I like that. Okay.
The duel already starts when Flint arrives and they sit down at that
and
table.
they sit. Mm-hmm. I like that.
Right?
Yeah.
I just feel like there's like a serious mirroring happening here. We have two parallel duels that have a lot of things in common. Okay, so we have them at the table. They are kind of doing what we're about to see Rackham and Rogers do, is that they're doing pirate theater, basically. They're doing pirate theater at each other. So like Teach
Yes.
starts with this whole thing
Interesting,
about,
yeah.
you've been through this, you've been through that. Either you are unkillable or way overdue. And I feel like
Maybe both.
right. I feel like the whole show is kind of saying that. Like it
Basically, yeah. Well, and even the last episodes when we had all of that with Death, right? And
Right.
and Flint wanting Death. So I think he's on that same page. I think that was
Right.
echoing a thought that he'd had.
Right, and it's a binary proposition, like Rogers was about to say about the gold. Like we just don't know which of these. Like he could be immortal.
He could be immortal.
I feel like the show sometimes is suggesting this.
Right? Yeah. Well, we talk about him being godlike.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they're just really, I really enjoy the posturing that's happening, and also the bit of history of them. We get a little of their history, that they actually had history, because he says, he rattles off. They love naming historical pirates.
They do. I kind of love it too.
Yeah, I do too. Oh, he was like, I was with him with Bellamy and Hornigold and Avery, and we all knew who we were, and then this guy came and told us how we could do everything better.
Yep.
And he's like, and here you are again.
And here you are again. I love that. And it's true. Flint, absolutely. We talk about him having this, that paternal, that hero complex, whatever it is, and coming through and just, I have the great white way if you follow me. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Well, and we talked even in season 1 when in his interactions with Hornigold, kind of before their interactions got a little crazy, Hornigold represented the old pirate world, the traditional pirates.
Yeah.
And Flint was the visionary. Like, remember when Hornigold was making fun of Gates? He's like, oh, God, you're starting to sound like him.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's, it's a bit of an echo of that whole thing. Like, Blackbeard is from that version of piracy.
Yeah. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
And that's what we would talk. I mean, this is really, the two of them sitting there are the embodiment of the struggle that Vane's having internally.
Yeah, I like that a lot. You're absolutely right. Well, and Vane struggling so much where his honor is. We talk so much about Vane being a man of honor and him having his own code. Yeah. And this is a big struggle for him, because Flint's right. He gave his word, but he has a long debt to teach.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I feel in large part this conversation at the table, the whole thing, I mean, at some point Flint actually directs it at Vane, but the whole conversation is directed at Vane.
Yes. Well, Flint makes it very clear. You're right. But
right. They both know that that's what they're fighting over right now.
Yes.
They're fighting for Vane. Mm. Yeah. So, they have the whole thing where Teach is like, well, Nassau's past its prime, after Flint said, well, you left before it even reached its prime.
Right. And Flint saying those men will go where they are led. That was big, too, because Vane really is trying to step up his game as a leader. Yep.
Absolutely. And and then Flint says, okay, this isn't actually your decision, this is Vane's. And that's when he turns it to Vane. I always watch the scene, and I always feel like in Vane's head he's like I hate it when my dads fight with each other.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, poor Vane with his daddy issues anyway. Oh, that's hysterical. Yes.
But don't you just feel like at the end he just has this look on his face when they decide to duel, where he's just like, fuck, why are you doing this to me?
Oh, no. Poor dear.
Right. But at the table, Vane sounds like Teach, and Teach is clearly gratified when Vane says Nassau is dead.
Yes.
And Flint's like, hey, had I been there, this wouldn't have happened. And Vane's like, had you been there, you would have seen how much they suck.
Yes. Yeah. Eloquently put.
He said it a lot better than me.
That's okay. Dan Schatz wrote real pretty words, but essentially.
The writers write pretty words, and I boil it down to they suck.
Totally fine. That works. What did you think of Flint's little speech about forget honor, forget loyalty, forget all of it? The only question that matters is this: who are you?
That is it. I mean, that is the question that Vane needed to have asked of him.
Well, to me, what was interesting about that is that's what we always say when it's who is Charles Vane. Like, we talk about his loyalty and his honor.
Yeah.
So it almost felt a little bit unfair, like to separate yourself from this virtue that is so tied to your identity.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I want to bring up a different aspect of way of looking at that. That's so interesting.
Please do.
I like what you're saying, and that's totally true. Okay. Because that is the thing that we've always put at the core of who Vane is. Mm-hmm. Vane is in the process of changing.
He is.
The thing that I noticed about it when he said that was how last episode we had that incident where Teach was doing what Vane had done to Eleanor, of telling him who he is.
Oh, that is true. That's a great point, because the thing about loyalty as a virtue is that it is dependent on other people. So maybe finding a loyalty to himself, finding, like what his actual wants are.
That is true. But the thing that I feel like possibly inspired him, he's always been defined by other people.
Yes. Even when he was defined by slavery. Yeah.
Right. Remember when we talked about the moment when we felt like Eleanor was seeing him, like using your terminology, when Eleanor saw him and like that's what spurred him to go fight Ned Lowe.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a moment where Flint kind of opened a door for him, like said, everyone's defining you. Vane had just had the experience of Teach also kind of putting him in a box. And then Flint saying the only thing that matters is who you are kind of opened a door for him to say, wait a minute, I can actually make a choice based on who I am, like who I define myself to be.
Right.
And then that really got me thinking, like, this is kind of a thing Flint does. We could say that perhaps Flint inspires people to be greater than their former selves. Like, that's what we're watching right now with Silver.
Sure. Yeah, certainly with Silver.
I don't think he does it intentionally. Like, I don't think he...
Well, I don't know. I mean, it depends on what you mean by intentionally, I suppose.
I don't think he's doing this out of generosity of spirit. I don't think he's doing this out of some sense of, like, I want to help my friends find their truest selves.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. It's just like a natural extension because because what? He is not very true to himself, or he struggles so much.
He does struggle so much. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's what he most wants. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. This is all very juicy, meaty stuff, and I like it a lot, but I don't have the answers.
I don't have the answer either, but I felt like in this moment, like some sort of switch was turned for Vane. Like I think he was honestly conflicted. He was leaning towards Teach. I mean, he did say, like...
Yeah, Nassau's dead.
We are now free. Again, he used Teach's word.
Yeah, I'm glad to be free of that place.
Right.
Freedom's so important, yeah.
Teach got all smug at that moment.
He sure did get smug, didn't he?
He gave him total smug face, like, he's my guy.
Yeah.
And yes, Flint is really good at motivating people to do, what he wants using words. But I think in this moment, he kind of stumbled on the words that Vane most needed to hear. I really don't know if Flint knew that those were the words that were going to unlock things. I don't think Flint had any inkling. I mean, he seemed so perfectly surprised when Vane stepped in. Like, I think Flint is so much in this moment, just like doing what he feels like he needs to do. He wants revenge for losing his home.
Right.
And so I don't think he's thinking that much about like his, like his really strategic influence people self.
No, I don't know. But because, I mean, he needs Vane. He really needs Vane.
He does.
So, I mean, that's the best thing he's got going for him now is, I hate to call it emotional manipulation, but that's pretty damn close to what he did.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know why I would hate to call it that because Flint does that all the time.
Exactly.
So let's just call it that. Yeah.
Exactly. It's totally emotional manipulation. And that is what Flint does. But I think what I'm saying is that possibly there is a trend of somehow the offshoot effect of this emotional manipulation that he does all the time is actually to help people widen their world and find new versions of themselves that are grander and larger and more powerful and possibly more personally fulfilling, if dangerous. Always dangerous.
Yes.
I had this feeling. That was my feeling about that moment. But you're right. I mean, but maybe like Teach said, wait, what did he say? He said your...
What did he say? Your commitment was your burden? You're committed to this place?
You're right. He did say commitment. It was commitment. So he said your commitment is your burden. I think you're totally right that loyalty has always been kind of the core of Vane and Vane and the thing that drives him. But like Teach said, your commitment is your burden. Perhaps Flint is unburdening him to some extent.
Oh,
that rather than define himself by this one thing...
Oh,
as beautiful
so it's a whole
as this thing
new
is,
kind of freedom, really.
Exactly.
Freedom from this burden of commitment. Yeah, to a person, whether you believe in their agenda or not.
Right, because Teach was saying freedom from the burden of commitment to Jack, but basically Vane just traded one burden of commitment for another burden of commitment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Flint is saying,
really a stronger one too, because of that paternal role.
Right, that's true. So Flint's saying, I don't give a shit about that. That doesn't matter at all. I don't care what you told me you would do. I don't care about your loyalty.
Yeah.
Who are you?
That's right. And there's freedom in that. He's not holding him to a promise the way that Teach was holding him to a promise.
No, he's saying, this is why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because they took my home. Who are you?
Yeah. Yep, that's really good.
And so that feels to me like, that's why. Because, I mean, there has to be a big thing. There has to be a big thing that would make Vane do this. Mm-hmm. It wasn't loyalty to Flint because he would have done it at the table. He wouldn't have even let this duel happen. Maybe let's watch this now. Let's watch who Vane is. Now that this door was open to him. If Flint opened this door of who are you, let's see where Vane takes that.
Yeah.
But I also want to talk about Gunn and Billy's conversation.
Yeah, that was an interesting exchange.
Ben Gunn pretty much asked what all of us are asking. Like, he spoke for us. He's just like, dude, not really sure where you stand here with this whole duel thing. And I love what Billy said. He says, part of the reason I was able to be by his side is I wanted to be there the moment the world catches up with him. And he says, the moment the story starts to make sense again, which I find so interesting on so many levels.
Yeah.
But mostly because Billy and Flint are Treasure Island characters.
That's right.
They actually come from a story. I just found it just was such interesting wording. Like he's talking about his life as a story.
Yeah, and when the story makes sense again. Well, and certainly Flint is always storytelling, though. Very interesting.
Isn't that interesting? And it is a little bit like, again, we're now having Billy a little bit put Flint into this kind of mythological character realm.
Yes.
Right? We've been having this
absolutely.
This flipping of Billy and Silver. I would just like for everyone to remember Billy said this, and I have reasons, and I will bring them up later. In future episodes, let's remember that Billy is framing this as a story.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so the duel.
The duel, first of all, is amazing, and it's so much fun to watch, right?
It is. Yes, it is. Go Lucas Hedlund.
Go Lucas Hedlund, yes.
And he talked about this. I remember him talking about like that he was like, spent a lot of time researching like how long they would do things and the timing and stuff. It's awesome.
It is awesome. It's so great. Yep.
Yeah, for me, I remember the first time I watched it, as much as I love Teach, when he went down, I was just like, be dead, be dead, be dead.
When he went down, and he stayed down for quite some time. Mm-hmm. And now I wonder, is that against the rules for Flint to then just go straight over there and stab him? Because that kind of seemed like the thing to do. But there was a lot of hesitation. He waited till he got up and got his sword.
He waited, right. I think the honorable thing was probably to wait until he got up and got his sword.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Had he gone over while he was still down but moving, I think that would have been...
Bad form. Bad form, Peter.
Well, right.
Thanks. I love it when you get my jokes, Daphne. It makes me so happy.
So he's doing a duel... right, for the fleet, but he needs to also, like, I don't think Flint actually personally would have had any problem going over and stabbing him while he's on the ground, except that he needs these men to want to follow him after.
Oh, of course. Of course. That absolutely makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
And, and we found out...
And not just out of fear and trepidation.
Right. And this is... Right. No. I think he was following the rules. I mean, he was scared. Yeah. He definitely was relieved.
I loved how scared he looked.
Right. He was...
Toby Stevens, you're so good.
I mean, look at those two guys. Like, you see them standing next to each other beforehand, and you're just like...
huge.
He's huge.
Yeah. He is huge. It's true. Such a barrel-chested man.
Right. It's not for nothing that Flint got good with the words, because, he's not that big.
It's true. Yeah, he's always dwarfed by Billy, too.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I mean, he definitely makes up for it in most situations with the power of his presence, except against Teach.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Very true.
He looks so relieved when Teach goes down, like kind of flabbergasted. It's just like, what?
Yep.
How did I get that lucky? And then he starts getting up and he's like, shit.
Here we go. Yep.
And he knew. I mean, he did his little bravado with Vane where he's like, I'm not that diminished. And it's like,
yeah, he's pretty diminished.
Exactly.
Yeah, you are pretty diminished. Well, and when he got the wound on his shoulder, that was again just, it was so great to see his arm like hanging, like he was trying to slice through underwater or something.
Right.
It was beautifully done. Tragic.
I remember just being so terrified the first time. So terrified. Yeah. And then so surprised that Vane stepped in.
When Vane jumps in, like I knew it was happening. I remember that part.
Right.
But still, in my living room, both fists in the air, I said, yes! It's just very exciting.
We have these moments where Flint and Vane, it's just like every time the two of them.
I love them together. I don't know what it is. But when they join forces, I just, like the cheering section of my body just goes apeshit. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're just so electric. It's like, remember back when they were fighting each other and we had that view of them like back in Eleanor's tavern and they're fighting each other. And I kept saying it was like Titans fighting each other. Like there's there is just something when they're against each other, the world just shakes and it has trouble. And when the two of them combine, you just get this sense that things are limitless.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Mm-hmm.
And it is every time. So exciting. So fun. But then Teach.
Poor Teach.
I know.
Yeah. Like we just wanted him dead. And now I'm like, but his heart is broken. Exactly. He's so betrayed. His only son.
I know. That just seems so wrong.
I know. I
love him. But, anyone against Flint, I'm going to root for Flint. It's just that simple.
Right?
And so I can't help myself. Well, okay, you know what? I said that and nobody can hold me to that in season 4 because I don't know what's going to happen in season 4. I don't want to think about it. That may end up being a problematic statement for me.
Yep. We'll have to see where the writers bring us. Oh. I am putty in their hands.
I am putty in their hands. Mm-hmm. This is my prediction. There will be multiple moments in season 4 where I'm just like, don't even know what to do with myself because people I love will be in opposition to each other.
Oh,
That's
wow.
my prediction.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. So the last thing we have with them is the scene at the end with Vane and Flint when they're back on the Walrus. Mm-hmm. And Vane's...
Oh, I like this so much because we see how much Vane has grown.
Yep.
This is a great, great line when Vane says that there was that last piece of information, there was one piece of information left, and he says something everyone else was quick to dismiss because it didn't benefit them in the moment.
Yep.
And I just remember when he was in that room and saying, what did he say? Show me my future here in this room. Like, look how far you've come, Vane. Forward thinking and a leader.
Right. And a strategic thinker. And I know.
I'm so proud of him.
I know.
And it's true. The two of them at the helm of that ship sailing back to Nassau, I'm just like, bring it on. Whatever is coming up against us will not stand against Flint and Vane together.
Yeah.
And of course, Flint's like, it would have been nice if we had the fleet.
I know.
True. Good point.
But that's also nice. I feel like, this is the first time we really just see the two of them kind of just hanging out.
Yeah.
And Vane's opening up. Vane's sad. Like he says all he ever offered me was friendship. Tell me this is going to be worth it. So it's still very manly hanging out, but
still very manly. Yes.
But Vane's being a little vulnerable. Okay, Flint not really being very vulnerable, but at least Vane was.
Right. Sure.
Okay, are you ready to go to Nassau?
I am always ready to go to Nassau. I thought you'd never ask, Daphne.
All right, let's go. Bye, everyone. So now we have duel number 2.
Oh, yeah. Jack. I want to start with Jack when he first goes up to get his pardon. Because, of course, first we get that great expression on his face in the street, which is so wonderful and the best gif ever. So that was nice to watch. But when he's up there, and as soon as he says his name, and it's interesting that we get John instead of Jack. I've never heard John before, but John Rackham. And then he gets his wish. They know his name. He has notoriety.
Oh my God, I didn't think about that. That's totally true.
And now I bet he wishes he didn't have it. He's like, well, shit. They know my name.
But how perfect for Jack that the moment someone knows his name is, that's...
Yep. I loved that little bit of irony. Another piece of great, great writing.
Oh, I hadn't thought about it that way. Mm-hmm. Oh, our dear Jack. Before that, he does have, I just wanted to slap those guys.
Which guys?
I want to, suppose that fort isn't getting built by itself.
Yeah. I mean, you do feel for him because we talked about how, he was doing everything he could to lead these men to do the thing, and nobody was having it. He just couldn't get it.
Right. Well, and then he says to Featherstone, when Featherstone comes in with his tit curtains... Sorry.
Sorry. You broke me a little. Yes, tit curtains. Oh, jeez.
I can't help it. It's just so good.
So good.
He's like, wait a minute. The streets are swept. Industry is in fashion. You're dressed like a Turkish whore. And all because a man arrived. He stood on a beach and said, please.
Stood on a beach and said, please. That was it. I liked that a lot.
But he does start to understand stuff. Before that, we have the little conversation with Eleanor and the chambermaid. Yeah. And this is, showing us how scary this situation is. Mm-hmm. And then Eleanor and Rogers. And I love what Eleanor says, that she says, insults to empires require responses.
Yeah.
And we're just
that was a good one. Yeah, I remember writing that one down. Insults to empires. I'm really liking Eleanor more and more. And it's about damn time.
Yeah, it's true. And this is where Rogers says his thing about a binary question, that either I return this gold and I'm respectable to, and I'm okay with Spain, or I don't, and I'm a pirate and they will come and destroy my island. And he explains to her, she's like, oh, we could fight. And he's like, no. This isn't your NASA anymore.
Right.
England's not going to leave us here to fight that. But I love that he says this binary question, and then it really doesn't take Jack very long to understand the exact same thing. First, we have to talk about the glorious verbal duel.
Oh my gosh. The speech about the book is my favorite thing. It's so good. So funny.
Yes, it is.
Another great gif. The congratulations on all that.
And it's funny. The thing I love the most about it is the stuff he says before that.
Uh-huh.
I love it. Well, Rogers is really trying, he's trying to have a civil discussion.
He is. He's actually quite charming. This whole scene, he's quite charming. Yeah. Like somewhat amused at Jack and a little bit impressed. And yeah.
Right. And
I get the feeling that the two of them would enjoy playing cards together in another situation.
Exactly. I mean, that's what I always feel like, is that the two of them would have actually been quite good friends had they met under different circumstances.
Interesting. Huh.
I don't think that's what Rogers is thinking. I mean, I think he's trying to have this, he's trying to do what he was trying to do with Nassau and Generals, is he's trying to do this in a polite way without fighting. So that's that's how he goes into this. And then Jack's just like, yeah, I'm just going to disrespect you from the very first minute. And which is what he does. And I love that he says, I know you a bit. I've read your book. And then he says, I may not have soldiered to the end.
Soldiered through to the end. That's a sharp barb there, Jack.
Yeah, he is just full of them in this meeting. And right? I mean, it's just so fascinating that he doesn't even know what this meeting is about. Right, I got the gist. He doesn't even know what this meeting is about, and he's just already poised to insult. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's just such an interesting thing that he's doing. Right, and then when Roger says, he's like, tell me what you think that gist is. And then he's just like, wealthy son, wealthy man, trying to impress parents. But then my favorite part, my favorite part that I took screenshots and tweeted about, because this is possibly my favorite Jack. I don't know. I've probably said this already.
I was going to say, you say that all the time, but that's okay. It's darling. It's adorable. I love it.
I know. But I love this so much.
I think your favorite Jack is the Jack that's on screen at the moment. Yes.
That's very
The Jack
awesome.
I can hold in my hand is my favorite Jack.
Okay, but this is really good, Jack. He says, please understand, I'm quite particular about my library.
I have no notes. God, he is the best, isn't he?
I know, but people seem to have liked it fine, and it seems to have done wonders for you. And I love, don't get me wrong, the way he says congratulations on all of that is so gorgeous, but that's the gif that everyone uses. But the lines before it about being particular about his library, that's what I love.
Yeah, it is really great. It's true.
This is so Jack in so many ways. I mean, it's so Jack because it's just a hilarious use of language. And I don't even know. I'm just I'm always looking for the perfect word that would describe Jack's special way of being kind of showy and kind of pretentious, but not really. I mean, it's so, I love it so much, but I don't know the word.
It's true. It's not quite smarm.
No, not at all. Because because I find it beautiful.
Oh,
But it's also just so hilarious. You know what I mean? It's like when you have a really good friend that does this kind of absurd things, and you love them for it, but you also laugh at them at the same time.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And they're going to do it. They're going to do whatever behavior it is. And part of you is laughing, and part of you is just like, this is exactly why I love you so much. That's how I feel about Jack all the time.
I like that. That's good.
And Rogers sees right through every bit of it. I just feel like Rogers is not really... Jack maybe surprises him a little bit by being more genteel and literate than Rogers expected. But at the same time, he's just like, I'm not going to engage with you on all of this. I'm just...
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, you said this thing. I'm just going to get down to what I'm actually have you in this office for. He's like, I know you have the gold. You need to return the gold or we're all dead.
I really liked that too. Brass tacks. He went straight to the point. Yep. I liked that a lot. And especially after all of that sparring that Jack had given him where he just went straight to the point. I really respected that. It's like, yeah, that's cute. Thanks for that little floor show that you did for me. But here's what we're actually here to talk about.
Exactly. That's exactly what he's saying. Right. And he's not being scary or threatening or he's still being quite polite, but he's just like, okay.
Right. Yeah. No, I love Woodes Rogers. I
know you do.
I might have a little bit of a crush on Woodes Rogers, actually. I just realized that. I like him a lot. Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay.
Liz and Eleanor both have the same crush. It's interesting, the power shift here. Okay, so we have Jack doing his little bravado thing, and I don't know if he thought he had the upper hand. I think he was just mostly amusing himself and just being,
amusing himself, yes.
But then, so the second time we see them, when Jack's has his back to Rogers and is pouring himself a drink, then it seems like Rogers has the upper hand, right? Because Jack's like, how do you know about this? Rogers doesn't even answer. And Jack's like, yeah, I know how you know about this. Mm-hmm. And then Jack says and then he talks about Henry Avery and how his dream was to have people speak of him with awe the way they had of Henry Avery.
Yes.
And he says, it's just not going to work the way I thought. And then Rogers says, it never does. If you want to control how they speak of you, write a book. And that's when you know that Woodes Rogers for sure is Jack's match. I just loved it because that was something
really wonderful.
Right. He totally didn't need to say that. That was his little jab. It was lovely. The first time I watched it, I was sure, when he says, do you have a pen? I was like, shit. Mm. Right? And, I totally thought that Woodes Rogers had won.
Yeah. Well, don't underestimate Jack. To be underestimated is an incredible gift. Have we still not gotten to that yet?
Sweetie, it's the last episode.
It's so good. Classic Jack Rackham. Okay. I cannot think of him without thinking of that line.
Oh, it's because it is the most Jack line ever. Yeah. No, it's an amazing line. It is one of those lines that once it's said, you're like, oh my God, that was it. That was it. This was the line that should have been in our heads this whole time. So when you rewatch, one of the beautiful things about rewatching is that lines like that just end up being in your mind all the time because they're so appropriate. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to point out, because this ties into what you were saying last week about Eleanor and Rogers, when Max walks in and says, I heard that Jack was arrested and I wanted to know why.
Yeah.
The way that the two of them look at each other is such like, they're so a team. I don't know. I needed better words, but the words I'll have is team. Like they give each other a look like we both know. And she doesn't know. Because she doesn't know. She doesn't know. Like she thinks that she got away with offering Woods Rogers her treasure without them knowing.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
She had no idea.
Oh God, I forgot. Wow.
Last episode, she was thinking that she was getting what she needed, but also pulling one over on Woods Rogers, and she didn't.
Didn't quite.
Nope. So yeah, the Max and Jack part is incredible. I love it. I love that she thinks, again, everyone's underestimating Jack. She thinks she can come in with this line about telling this story of him being the savior of Nassau, and that will appease him, because maybe she never understood that he was smarter than she thought.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she thinks that she can just hand him this thing. And I love what he says, that he calls that a lifeless story.
A lifeless story. I liked that so much.
Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then he says, I like my story better. It's going to get around all on its own.
That's very true.
It's very true. And then he shows that he understood this binary proposition.
Yes.
That he says, I thought there was a conquest, but there is no conquest. You either have it or you don't have it. And without that gold, he doesn't have it.
Yep, he certainly doesn't.
And don't you love the idea, like what Jack says when she's like, but he saw your letter. How could you tell Anne?
That was amazing. It's like, you don't think I can communicate one thought to Anne as simple as run. And it was beautiful. Yes.
Right?
Yes. That was one of those moments where you're just so grateful for Jack and Anne being Jack and Anne. It was really, that really drove that home.
You know what it always reminds me of when I hear him talking about that? It always reminds me of twins and their special languages.
Oh, yes.
And I remember being amused by this when we were talking about season 1, and you said that originally you were confused whether they were siblings or a romantic couple.
Oh, and twins. That's very good, Daphne. Yes.
And I feel like that this moment really solidified for me because their relationship is so loving and so non-traditional and romantic, not romantic. It's just so doesn't fit into the categories that we are used to seeing in stories or in life necessarily. But there is something. It's like it is a romantic relationship, but there is kind of a sister-brother element to it, too.
Yes, there is.
And I feel like this kind of drives that part of it home, like that they do have a secret language.
Wow, that's so cool.
I love them so much.
I do love them. They're very cool. Yeah, it's an excellent dynamic.
Yes, and I just love that back and forth between their conversation and watching Anne read that letter and act on it. Complete confirmation. I mean, the confidence with which he says this just shows how strong their bond is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And confirms, I think, the stuff that Jack and Max talked about earlier, that Anne loves Max, but that she and Jack are connected in a way that kind of transcends a romantic relationship.
Oh, I love that. Connected in a way that transcends a romantic relationship. That's beautiful. And you're absolutely right.
I just find them so fascinating. Then he says, I've begun the duel. I just love when Jack is smart. And he so often is. And
he is.
He just figured this all out so quickly that this is what he needed to do. This idea that Spain will come and destroy Nassau and then the Second Pirate Republic. Like, also, totally disturbing concept, but kind of beautiful at the same time.
It was, yeah. Well, and you've seen then how much Jack is willing to well, I wouldn't even say sacrifice because it's not a sacrifice for him, but how many other lives that he's willing to sacrifice? What?
No,
Go
it
ahead.
would be a sacrifice for him because Woodes Rogers said if Spain comes, you're the first face they'll see. Oh, no, he's completely sacrificing himself.
Oh, that's right.
He knows he would die if this happens.
Oh my God, you're so right, Daphne. I'm so glad you said that. Yes. Because I still had this idea of him running off with Anne.
Oh, no.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that.
Now I want to make another parallel. Okay, so we have two parallel duels happening here, right? The other parallel is Jack in this moment to Flint in the last episode, where Flint was willing to sacrifice his life before he came up, with Plan B with Silver's help. He was willing to sacrifice his life so that the story his crew would tell about him is that he's a hero, not a villain. And Jack in this situation is willing to sacrifice his life so that the story told about him is that he's the reason for the second pirate republic.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, I like it.
We've had in this season moments of parallel between Flint and Jack. Again, we have the large thing of like them both being big picture people, right? But that's, that's a lot of people. But I feel like there is some thesis happening here that I don't quite have the shape of yet. And maybe that'll come in season 4 of these interesting parallels between Flint and Jack. Because I don't think of them as similar people, really.
Yeah, I certainly don't.
But I feel like there are these moments that are really, really, really strong parallels.
Mm-hmm. That's
like
just good storytelling. Yeah, absolutely.
It is. It is good storytelling, but I feel like there is some message. Like, I feel like this show in general chooses to make parallels between characters. And those parallels, like shifting sands, those parallels move. Sometimes this person will be parallel with this person will be parallel with this person. And I feel like the parallels always have meaning. Like they sometimes are saying, look at how these people are similar in ways you didn't think. I feel like even more so, we've had moments where the parallel actually is a great way to accentuate how the two characters are different. Like the two people can walk the same road, but the way they walk that road is so different despite the parallels.
Yeah, I like that very much.
So I just want to keep an eye on for the rest of the season and into season 4 on the two of them, like where they are actually intersecting with each other. So I felt like this one was a really strong intersection.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And again, Flint at the end of last episode into this episode went away from the idea of sacrificing himself for the sake of his story and actually becoming an active creator of his story. So now let's see what happens with Jack in relation to that idea.
I like that. Okay.
So the last thing in NASA, it's funny. I feel like the last thing in NASA is a conversation that's not that different from the last scene with Flint and Vane, is that we kind of have a little bit of a regrouping. We have Rogers with Eleanor and Max.
Where that's
everyone,
right.
Kind of a statement of intent on everyone's part, which is kind of what happened with Vane and Flint at the end, where Rogers said, okay, you all seem so confident, now you're not. And they were like, well, you might need to do, and he's like, I'll do anything. I'm prepared to do anything. And then Max has to now make a stronger claim for herself being aligned with Rogers because they know she lied to them. Or whatever, lie through omission. But she didn't tell them the full story. And that's when she really commits herself. She says, you do what you need to do. They were my partners, my friends, and more. Is that what she says? It's so sad.
And more. Yep, it is sad.
But she says, you won't lose the street because you have me. Therefore, you have the street. This is a hard moment for me to watch Max. But she said, I've sacrificed too much.
Yep.
Which is exactly what Jack said last episode about his name.
Oh, yeah, to lose it now. The stakes are high for everybody. Yeah.
Right. He said, I lost too much to lose the name too. And she's saying, I've lost too much to lose my standing that I've built. Yes, the stakes are high.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. This, we're in. For all of you who are watching for the first time, buckle up. the rest of the season.
Indeed. Oh, that's great.
All right, let's move to the island.
Oh, good. This is the part I really wanted to talk about. I mean, it's a great episode all around, but yeah, I wanted to talk about the duel in this. So
okay, all right.
I have never loved Silver more than right now. John Silver is amazing right now.
Right.
What's the first thing we hear him say? It'll pass, as he's there with his, the leg is killing him. And Maddie can see it immediately. And she's absolutely right. He needs to be there. Like, if he wants to show that he is part of, that he's for this community, he needs to be there.
Right.
So, yeah, it'll pass. You and me both, buddy. I wrote down.
Oh, I know. Did you notice, so the first time she finds him, he's on ground level, and then she takes him somewhere, I think. Because then he's on a higher level. I don't know if it's her hut or some other place, but I felt like she took him. I feel like she took him out of, the view of the general public to have his treatment.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah.
So that's kind of like I felt like her first step of compassion here. This is the episode of Maddie shows compassion and tough love.
Compassion and strength at the exact same time. She is everything I want to be as a woman. She's amazing.
Oh, wow. That's so true. Compassion and strength. Mm-hmm. Yes, that is Maddie.
That is Maddie. Compassion and strength.
Right.
And the two of them working in union really beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like making each side stronger.
Absolutely. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, she is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. When they're up, wherever they are, the second time we see them, and she tells the man who's there with them, watch him, I'm going to get help. And he says, I said I don't want help. And she says, I know you did. And she's, again, this is this regal person again. She's just like.
She is regal.
Right? Mm-hmm. I love this, that she's like, she's going anyway. Like, this is what she's doing. And then we have two moments of them touching. And the first one is he touches her.
Yes.
And he gets a knife to the throat for it.
He sure does. Absolutely. Yep, he sure does. Yeah. It's still a great moment, though. But yes.
Oh, it's so great.
But it's them so hard.
Well, but it's great on two levels. I mean, partly because you ship them for Liz.
For me,
and partly because this is a great moment of us showing. I mean, yes, we know she's the princess. Yes, we know her. Whatever, they don't call her princess, but we know she's the daughter of the queen, and we understand what reverence they get from their people. But this is an amazing moment of that, that he doesn't even blink. Like you touch my leader, you get a knife to your throat.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So this is a really beautiful moment of us seeing how different this community is. We've had many moments of seeing many ways in which they're different from anything we've seen up until now. Mm-hmm. But this kind of serious loyalty is not something we see with the pirates.
That's very true. You are right about that. Yep.
Yeah, so then she asks why he chooses to suffer.
Oh, this speech is so gorgeous. I love it. And it speaks to me personally. I really like it.
I'm sure it does. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
That he needs to put on this front. I love that he says, I've been holding my entire world together with both hands.
Mm-hmm. I cannot look weak. I cannot feel weak. I cannot be weak. Yep.
Yeah.
I have to look the part.
Yep. Exactly.
I feel you, Silver.
So I guess my question is, okay, we know about pirate theater. We know all of this. How much is this true, and how much is this something he's putting on himself? And I don't know if we'll find an answer to that. I'm just curious.
It's interesting.
This made me look back at season 2 a little bit today.
Yeah.
And look back at, remember when he went to Max after Anne had killed Charlotte and Logan?
Yes.
And he does the whole thing like, I can't have this going on with
different
Flint.
He looks just physically from them.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's always good to peek back at past Silver when you're in season 3 at any point in the past, just to remind yourself how different he is. But he has that same thing where he's managing a situation as an outsider. So it's really interesting. So he talks to Max when he's like trying to figure out what their cover-up story and all this. And that was the time when he said, if Flint or his crew, and she says, aren't you his part of his crew?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So back then he wasn't part of the crew, but he felt like he had to manage all of the parts.
Yes.
So it was just interesting to me because now he's talking about doing that as part of the crew and for the crew. But this sense that he has that he alone needs to kind of manage everything is still interesting. He still has this burden of feeling like he somehow has to do this alone, has to deal with all this alone. I mean, I guess this episode is where he starts to see another way. But but it just made me go back to that, to remember that how similar that aspect of what he's saying is, even though his intent back then was just to like puppet string Flint and the crew so that he could get what he wanted, whereas now he's doing it for the sake of the crew.
For the sake of the crew, yeah.
But the burden is like slightly different, but kind of similar at the same time. Right. And this is, I love when she says, no one prepared you for this.
I love her so much. Yep, I have that written down too. And then I love Maddie. And when she says, I believe not even you know why, but I know why. She is wonderful. The crown is always a burden, but it cannot be borne if you cannot stand. Yep. And when she touches his hand, he's in pain and struggling. And so she just reaches over and just, all right, I'm here with you.
Yeah.
God, you're a good woman, Maddie. You're a good woman to hold a tether and to find a way out. She is amazing. She is all that is woman, and I want to be her. Yeah. Sorry.
And you want her library.
And her library, please. Sure. Also, to be queen would be fine. Thank you. If we're wishing.
Yeah, we maybe need a new nickname for you because you want to be that queen.
That's right. Yeah. Queen of, I don't know. Yeah.
Right.
Queen of the island.
Queen of unnamed island.
Queen of unnamed island. That doesn't have quite the same ring to it as Queen of Nassau, I have to say.
We'll come up with a new name by the end of the season because we will learn things about this island.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. One thing I loved when she says you weren't prepared for this, she says, I've been prepared for this. Like now, this is a new view of leadership.
Has. Yes, that's right.
We've seen leaders who've become leaders because they're scrappy.
They are scrappy. I was going to use the exact same word, just scrapping their way up. Yes.
She is a leader because she was raised to be a leader. And this is a different thing.
It is a different thing. Oh,
right?
Wow. Yes. It's why she has that regal air. Yes.
And I want to bring this back to London, is that she is a leader in a similar vein to how Thomas was a leader. Thomas was also someone to be who was raised to be a leader.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
So I don't know where I want to go with that, but I just thought of that parallel recently. And I love what she says about it. She says that she knew she was going to take over for her mother and that forever after that, she would be the one who tends as opposed to the one who is tended to.
Yep. Yes.
So this is also a very different view of leadership. I mean, we can go through all of our people now and kind of think who, if you had the spectrum of people who view leadership as tending instead of being tended to.
Yes.
It's just interesting. Like Teach, no, definitely not the way Teach sees things. I am not sure that Woodes Rogers is really that kind of leader. He only talks about the street as something he needs to manage.
Yeah.
He doesn't talk. This is where the whole Woodes Rogers Thomas thing separates, because Thomas would have changed Nassau for the sake of the people. Woodes Rogers never talks about taking over Nassau for the sake of its residents. The residents are an obstacle that he has to deal with.
That is right.
You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying.
Flint, I think, is someone who would like to think of himself as someone who tends to others.
He just, and yet, here we are.
And I'm going to posit that when she says this to Silver, right after what he said and what he's about to say, she's speaking to him.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, Silver wanted gold. I don't believe that he has taken this role that he's taken in the crew for the sake of the power. He actually is taking it for the love of the crew. He never wanted a crew. He never wanted to be a pirate.
Right.
It's about the community.
Yeah.
So I think that in the same way that Flint, with his anger and his self-actualization, opened a door for Vane, Maddie is perhaps opening a door for Silver. For a view of leadership that might actually speak to his essential self. This is, I want to talk about what Andrew said.
Andrew Dice. Yeah, go ahead.
And
Andrew Dice sent us an email today, and he's brilliant and lovable, and he's going to be on our podcast soon. And listen to Total Geek Hall podcast because he's on that. And
and he's fabulous. But yes, so I don't want to totally talk about what Andrew brought up because it's beautiful.
We'll have him on the show.
We'll have him on the show.
Yeah,
we'll have him on the show.
So that was a lovely tease for you, everyone.
Yes, of me just not knowing what to say. But I do think that Maddie is speaking to love of one's people, to love and devotion of one's people and sacrifice. And as absurd as it is, after all we've seen of Silver, I think this is who he is now. That is who he is. And he's suffering for it. He's literally physically suffering for it, but also spiritually and emotionally suffering for it. And so this idea of the crown being heavy, but also the crown being about tending to others. I think that is, he's saying, wait a minute, that's what, I just feel like that he's like going, whoa, that's kind of what I've been doing, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing.
Yes. Yeah, it's a big moment for him. And I love these two together. And again, what she says about being a tether. These two could be a really excellent tether for one another.
Exactly. Right. And he talks about it. He says, it's not the men. They are not the burden for me.
That's right. Yeah.
He says the burden is the fear of going to these dark depths for their sake. So again, exactly.
And not being able to resurface. Yeah.
Right. So he is afraid of what the process of tending to them will do to him, which again, this is what was the same thing in the doldrums. This is his problem right now. And so she's both seeing him. I keep wanting to say this because I love that you always say this when someone sees someone else. Like she sees him, but she does. She sees him. She understands. She says it. She's like, you don't even know, but I know.
Yeah.
She sees him. And she's offering him strategies. And this is what he needed.
And not only strategies, but again, her own...
Right, her own self.
Her own self, yeah, I was going to say. And we just talked about him wanting community. And I mean, that touch that she gives him and that being there for him personally as a person, and with compassion is huge.
It is huge. And I think... that might be the thing that Silver never knew he needed. Again, the crew started to teach him that lesson.
Yes. Well, but we did see him, how much he felt that loss. Yeah. When he lost Muldoon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's been learning the lesson that he needs community and he's capable of love. Yeah. But he needs help. He needs help. He's like she said, like he's worried about the other people who have followed Flint and connected with him never resurfacing.
Yeah.
And she says, so you need another person. Like it takes a village to be with Flint.
Fair enough.
It's amazing. It is an amazing scene. I know I keep saying this, but I really find Silver's development so fascinating and beautiful. Truly beautiful.
Yes, it really is.
All right. So let's talk now about Maddie and Scott. So this again, we have a quiet scene at the end where we learn new things and we have a statement of intent. We learn a lot here. So we have Maddie worried, rightfully. Can you imagine? Right. Can you imagine, like, you are now in coalition with these people and then you hear what Silver said? I mean, she was awesome,
Yes.
But like, you've got to imagine that some part of her is just screaming in the back of her mind going, what the hell did we just do?
Yeah. That's a
These
good
people
point.
are crazy. Right. And Scott says, this is a callback. I mean, Scott, again, he knows these people. But remember when he said about Silver, when he said to Billy, like, that he thought Flint was the person who could best motivate people through a story, but then they're watching Silver tell the story before Charlestown, and he said, I think this one's even more talented. And what happens if he chooses to use it for his own purposes?
For his own purposes. Yeah, I do remember.
I will bring that conversation up again later this season. But so we know that Scott understands this stuff. What I find fascinating is now we learn basically what Scott's grand plan was. Yeah, I love it. So yeah, he talks about the talents that Silver and Flint have and how they create narratives, our storytellers. We know this, storytelling is power. He says, but this narrative needs a villain and we must manage them. And is this not what Scott has been doing all along in Nassau?
Yeah. Wow.
Managing the powerful people. But he so understands it. He says, basically you have to keep them from seeing each other as villains, and God forbid they see us as villains. But then he talks about that he wanted to leave her one thing that no one could take. And I'm assuming, having talked about stories, that this is the library. Now we know why he gave her that library.
Oh,
So that she could understand the world of, basically the white people world. Like she could understand the world of civilization, of the Europeans, of the pirates, of all of them. So this is the thing that's interesting to me, because he says, I want you to be strong enough to understand their world, to interact with their world, to wage war with their world, right? But he says the villain makes the story. So to manage our current partners, the pirates, we must ensure that we agree on a common villain. So the thing that I found interesting, and I'm not sure if my interpretation of it is correct, is that he says, if their identity lies in their stories, I wanted you to know them so that when you are ready to call them enemies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, when you're ready to call them enemies.
Now, again, what you see when he's saying this is she's pulling out the book by Woodes Rogers. She's pulling out his book to read. So that's obviously the common enemy he's talking about.
Right.
But so that's my question for you. Do you feel like there's a seed in here of him saying, he calls them our current allies, I think is what he calls the pirates. So is he sowing in here a seed of her possibly not always being in coalition with them? Like, now I'm just so curious what Scott's endgame plan was here.
Yeah.
I feel like that's hinting, but I'm not sure if we can know exactly what he meant there.
It's a
but
little ambiguous, yes.
Right, we should keep an eye on that. But I do love this idea that he had been building her a library. He so respected the strength of storytelling, as does Black Sails as a story.
Yes.
As do our characters in general. And I love this idea that even though he couldn't be with her, he was basically giving her the tools she would need.
Yeah.
And giving her the tools that she would need for a different purpose than the one her mother was teaching her. Like, he was already inserting an alternate plan to what the Queen wanted.
Oh,
The Queen wanted them to stay secret, stay safe.
Right.
Whereas Scott's talking about, I was giving you the weapons you needed to wage war.
Yes. That's
Isn't that
good.
interesting? I feel like I just want to sit down with Scott and just be like, how did this all happen? Like, how did you become this person and come up with this crazy plan, this amazing plan? And right, he was kind of subverting everyone, including his wife. Like, he was subverting and kind of supporting. Like, he was kind of supporting everyone, managing them, certainly.
Right. Managing, I like that, yes.
But I feel like this is when he shows that his ultimate goal here was arming his daughter for a war.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and he would have known, being there on the island, being at Nassau, he would have known that,
Right.
that it was imminent, that this was coming. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. He knew
You
everything.
can't hide forever. Mm-hmm.
He knew everything. And I said this in the last episode, I just love the idea of Scott smuggling weapons and tools and books to the island.
And books. Uh-huh.
I love that idea.
It's wonderful.
And it's true. I mean, if she, like Jack, will have read his book. Mm-hmm. You learn a lot about a person by reading their book. And it's going to be her job. We've seen, look at all this dueling. We've seen so much strife between our characters.
Yeah.
And she's now been put in the place where her father says, you be the one to guide them.
Yeah.
And I totally believe that she can.
I do. Yeah. I'm so excited to see it. Mm-hmm. I hope we see that.
Yeah. I love this scene. I love this scene so much. I love having a good father in this show.
Yeah, it's good. It did make me think a little bit about Eleanor and Richard Guthrie and how messed up their relationship was. And it's nice to see this. Yeah.
Right. And to see that the person who was possibly the good father figure for Eleanor was actually a father of someone else. And his loyalty was actually somewhere else.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yep.
Yeah. Eleanor has a hard time finding people who are actually on her side.
Mm-hmm. But that's about it, right? That wraps us up pretty much.
Yeah, I think we've
Okay.
I think we've done this episode.
All right.
Ready to guns! Full complement!
All right, Liz, you ready with a thesis statement?
Well, I hope so. I think this episode was a little trickier than usual. Mm-hmm. There were a few that seemed pretty good. None of them really struck me as being the absolute choice. But I think if I had to narrow it down between, everything about Vane and Teach and everything about Woods Rogers and Jack and Silver and Maddie, is Flint's question he posed to Vane. The only question that matters is this: who are you?
I had one, but I think I'm going to go with yours.
You think that one's all right? Yeah.
Yeah,
this was a hard one.
I do.
I'm very interested to hear actually what our listeners have to say, because this was not an easy one for me.
Yeah, this one wasn't an easy one for me. I mean, I was thinking about the conquest question, but no, I think let's go with yours. I think we have a lot of talk about storytelling this time,
yes.
But I don't think there's a quote about storytelling that fits everyone.
This was a hard one for a thesis statement. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the idea of defining who one is works for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it really works for Rogers, but it definitely, Rogers has the question of how Spain looks at him, whether they're going to see him as a pirate or not.
Yeah.
But that's not about who you are to the core. No. But I do think that touches a lot of characters here. So let's go with that. I wanted something dually, but there's not. I don't think there are any lines from the duels.
No. Sorry, dear.
Okay, so we have people who got the last one correct. Our last group of people are, we have a new person. We have @Scorpion80 on Twitter.
Scorpion is already a really badass pirate name, I would like to point out. So it's going to be very hard to improve upon. Scorpion. Okay, so Scorpion gets to be...
Oh, no.
I'm sorry. I know. I'm working on it. Give me a second.
It's okay.
Usually it's pretty quick.
You want to meet again tomorrow to record just the...
I'm seriously thinking about it. These are
I'm just gonna sit here and drink scotch. I'm good.
Right? I have a little bit left. I have to do a tipsy poetry reading after this. I'm so determined to do it. I'm so warm and fuzzy. It's the perfect time to do a tipsy poetry reading. All right. So Scorpion, I don't think can really be improved on all that much. So I'm just going to go with Scorpion Pierce, which I really like because it has the idea of like stinging and poisoning. So Scorpion Pierce, welcome aboard ship.
Welcome aboard. Okay, and the next is Charlie 1877.
Chumbucket Charlie, you're getting a promotion.
Yep.
So that's up to bosun now. I think that's the first promotion for Chumbucket Charlie. Might be a quartermaster.
Oh, might be quartermaster.
Let us know. I feel like you might be a quartermaster. I think I've said Chumbucket Charlie twice because it's an excellent name. I really like it. I think that you might be quartermaster.
I think so too. I think
Let
quartermaster.
us know if we messed it up. Either way, you're brilliant. We love you.
And then Emily Emerly.
Oh,
I know.
Stormy Morley, you're a captain now. Aye, Captain.
I know. Seriously, Emily, you have been on a roll.
On a roll. Well done.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I know. Rising in the ranks. Mm-hmm. Kind of at silver level speed here.
Silver level speed. I love that. Very good.
Wait, so she's a captain?
I think so. Yeah.
Then you need to give her a ship.
Do I right away? Is that how that works?
Yes, that's how it works.
Ship immediately. If you're a captain, you get a ship. I thought I had. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. Well, Stormy Morley gets a ship called the Tempest. Obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's so funny. I was about to say the same thing.
See, well, because it's obvious. Yes. Okay. Stormy Morley of the Tempest. You're welcome.
All right. That's fabulous. Mm-hmm. And our last person is our dear cabin boy.
Our cabin boy, Andrew Dice. Oh, yes. You get a real pirate name now. We brought you aboard. You are...
I need to leave that noise in. No, I'm not going to leave that noise in. But
You're hysterical. I didn't notice.
I love that some of your thinking noises sound amazingly sexual.
Some of my thinking noises are sexual. I'm sorry. The brain is the biggest sex organ. I don't know what to tell you. Yes.
That is true.
Let's see.
It's such a great name.
It is. I was going to say Andrew Dice is a really good name with a Y. Yeah, that's another one that's hard to improve upon. Dice. Okay, Andrew Dice, you were our sweet cabin boy, and then you sent us this amazing email, and you showed us your stuff, much like Dufresne biting a man's jugular, except awesome, because Dufresne sucks. So we're going to call you Bloody Knuckles, because you're a badass.
But you're still our cabin boy.
But still our cabin boy. Yeah. Our bloody-knuckled cabin boy.
Yes, we will just call you by name now, instead of just calling you cabin boy.
I like it. Very good. Okay. Well, I think that wraps us up for this week, right, Daphne?
Nope. It does not, because you haven't told me your favorite thing yet.
Oh, my favorite thing. My favorite thing is Maddie taking Silver's hand, holding. Yeah, Maddie is amazing. And that move was strength and compassion and femininity and leadership and a teaching moment. And she was extraordinary.
She was. It's totally true.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bit torn.
Oh?
I did talk about, and it is true, I have extreme love for the furniture in Teach's camp.
Yes.
I don't know why.
Uh-huh. That's fair.
It's kind of like, remember how much I loved Flint's desk, like his little office out in the tent? There's just something I really adore about these situations where you have like proper, beautiful wooden furniture set under tents on a beach, because it's so absurd.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
But as much as I love that, I still have to go with Jack, because I'm quite particular about my library.
God, I love him. Yeah.
So
it's very good. You're right.
So yet again, I choose Jack.
Okay. Fair enough. I like it.
And now we're done.
Okay. And now we will... Yeah, we'll meet back again next week. We'll break this thing down. We'll see what sands have shifted in Nassau.
We will.
All right. Well, until then, from Common Room Radio, I am Liz Stevens.
And I'm Daphne Olive.
Fathoms Deep is a Common Room Radio production. For more information and access to other programs, please visit us at commonroomradio.com. To show your support, pledges of as little as $1 a month can be made to patreon.com/commonroomradio. Join the conversation by using the hashtag Fathoms Deep and follow us on Twitter at BlackSalesCast. We ask that you keep your tweets respectful and positive, and please avoid spoilers. If you have more to say, we want to hear it in all its spoiler glory. Email us at podcast@commonroomradio.com with Fathoms Deep in the subject line. Thanks for listening. It is totally cool. You are way overthinking this. And you're stripping for me again. It's my favorite part. Every time.
Yeah, and this is not in the podcast.
You said you were cold.
I'm hot now because I got embarrassed.
Hot now because I got embarrassed. Please blooper reel that. Please.
Yes, and Alistair Stevens, you are a little bit behind on our podcast, but when you get to this episode, that one is dedicated to you because you were so amused by the idea that I drink and do this podcast. So, Alistair Stevens, drink.
Drink.